imagine a README file that says, in this code base, we prefer lines to be less than 80 characters long, right? You could do that, or you could just make a linter that just deterministically enforces that, right? And there's loads and loads of examples like that where you could like expend a bunch of energy and tokens to get the AI to kind of think about things and follow things, and it's going to sometimes do it, sometimes not. Or you could use a good old-fashioned linter, a good oldfashioned type checker, etc., etc.
Makefile. Yeah, to your point, anything you can not put in context is you're going to get a more effective session.
That's number one. It's like the number one game, like the number one thing that I think people need to learn, the kind of skill, the new skill that you need to learn to be successful with these coding agents is context management, like really thinking about context, like very intentionally managing what's in the context of the agent.
Pete Hodgson, no relation, is an independent software delivery consultant based in the Pacific Northwest, supporting and advising startup and scale-up engineering teams, including training on adoption of AI-assisted engineering. Pete was the CTO at PartnerSlate, worked as a principal consultant for ThoughtWorks, is a founding member of the governance board for Open Feature, which defines open standards for feature flagging. This makes sense, given that he wrote what I think of as the seminal Martin Fowler article on feature toggles. He also wrote a great article that got some traction called Chain of Vibes. And he's our guest today on the Engineering with AI podcast. Pete, welcome.
Hey, nice to be here.
So let's get into it. You and I have worked together before, but in the before times, right? Back then we wrote our code like software developers manually, I guess?
Yeah, with our fingers.
You got it. I like that. That's exactly right. Do we still? But let's start out with a little bit about you, though. Like I gave a bit of a bio a minute ago, and I learned some stuff about you in prepping for the bio. I didn't know about the Feature Toggle Foundation, for instance. That's really cool. But yeah, I mean, introduce yourself and talk to us a little bit about how you got into this and what you've been doing recently.
Sure. Well, I think you gave a good bio. So I spent most of my career working in kind of startup land. I had a stint at ThoughtWorks with my other Hodgson, Kyle here, and at ThoughtWorks did a lot of stuff that was more kind of in the enterprise-y world. But after ThoughtWorks, I kind of went back to startup land, and then kind of went back into consulting, but working more with like it says in my bio, kind of startups and scale-ups, and like. The way I describe the type of work I do is kind of like on the intersection of kind of people and technology and kind of like process. And so a lot of the stuff that I ended up helping with is kind of things like help us get better at continuous delivery, or help me build my engineering team from the ground up, or help me. We were one team, and now we've scaled up to 20 teams or 5 teams, and we don't have like an architecture group, so help us kind of establish an architecture group. So I ended up spending a lot of my time helping kind of like with organizational transformation and kind of like helping introduce new technical practices or new kind of like organizational practices. And I think kind of like over the last 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, maybe not 5 years, 2 or 3 years, more and more of the time when I'm talking to leaders at engineering organizations, this kind of topic of AI kind of came up. And so that's what I've kind of like just naturally kind of fallen into, spending kind of pretty much all of my time now helping engineering teams kind of adopt AI as kind of as a way of getting better at building software. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like a lot of it is actually kind of just the same as like, how do I start getting better at automated testing, or how do I move towards continuous delivery? Like, how do I have my engineers adopt AI powered engineering? Is kind of like a lot of it is the same, but then there's these weird kind of differences that are super, super different. So it's kind of a fun, it's a fun new puzzle to solve.
Right. So to that point, working with all these different teams and working different organizations, you're seeing a lot. But let's start in the small. Like, what tools have you used? What tools do you like? Like, when you're actually writing code, what do you gravitate towards in terms of an approach?
Okay, so I guess even just saying when you're writing code is there's some kind of nuance to that, right? Because there's the actual like typing it in versus like deciding what code to write. And so my kind of like, that said, my daily driver is Claude Code. I think from when that first came out, which feels like a long time ago, but I think it wasn't. Yeah. It was like this year, which is really crazy to me because I feel like I've been using it for a really long time. From kind of like the early days of Claude Code coming out, that was when just kind of I really got bought in on the idea of AI making me more productive as a software engineer. So I use Claude Code all the time. I tried using Cursor for a while and it never really stuck with me. I use like Copilot in VS Code to do kind of like low-level code editing. So like in a single file, things like that, just kind of tab completion, or like in a file just saying like, hey, please add this extra thing to this thing or something like that. So I use that in the small, and then I use Claude Code normally like in the so Claude Code has like a VS Code extension now. So I use it kind of like on this side of the screen in my mind. And that's what I do for kind of that more that like lower level kind of thing, and then for like helping me think through how I'm going to approach like a design or something like that. I kind of bop around all over the place. I use a lot of just ChatGPT. I use a lot of Claude in the web browser. I used ChatGPT in like research mode quite a lot for a while as a way of kind of trying to get like a more kind of deeper, thoughtful, like for kind of like more greenfield decisions. Like I need to add this web service I need to add like an internal only UI for my company, and we're running in Google Cloud. Like, what are the different options for me to implement that? Because it's the kind of thing where there's just like 17 different ways to do it, and having an AI go off and do some initial kind of research is kind of a nice thing to do. And so ChatGPT research is good for that. Yep.
Yeah, I can relate to where you're going. Like I've asked it a few times. Like, all right, I need to send an email with this app. Like, what am I going to do? And I had some assumptions in mind, and it mentioned some other new startup, and I ended up giving them my money, and it was fine. It's weird how it's like shaping decisions, but I also don't regret it. Like they've been great. Yeah. So it's really, as far as research and tool selection and all that, it's definitely part of my workflow too. Yeah, I follow that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like anything with AI, you've got to take it with a grain of salt. So I treat it as like an extra source of information. A lot of times what I find that kind of AI really useful for is just kind of getting past that kind of like blank page kind of like writer's block of like, I don't even know where to start. Just kind of like give me some ideas to start with, and then sometimes like you said, sometimes it will come back with this suggestion and I'll kind of end up going with that suggestion. A lot of the times it kind of gives me at least like the words to Google for, because it is like the thing that AI is really good at is just knowing a bunch of like random stuff. Like it knows, like it does hallucinate stuff too, although I think it's gotten better at that. But like it does know, like if I want to know what's the GCP equivalent of like, I don't know, like a VPC, or I can't think of a good example, but like it'll just know that and at least give me the words to Google for and the thing to do some more research. I wouldn't trust ChatGPT's taste or even like intelligence when it comes to that kind of stuff, but it definitely is like the weirdly knowledgeable aspect of AI where it's like got this kind of like creepy encyclopedic knowledge. I think if you imagine an intern with encyclopedic knowledge, you wouldn't tell the intern like, hey, make all the decisions, but you would certainly say like, hey, you speak Farsi, tell me how to say this word, right? Like it's useful for that,
And it's incredibly fast at like searching the web. Like it makes me never want to build a screen scraper ever again. They are so good at this.
Yep.
Yeah. One of the things that personally I picked up on is like using it with frameworks that it's not good at is sometimes detrimental. I don't know if I told you the story, but I was building an app with a JavaScript framework I won't name, and I really loved. And I realized at some point, you're not good at this, Claude. but I'm keeping you. So I literally just asked it, like, what should we switch to? And, and to your point, you have to take it with a grain of salt, agree with all of that stuff. You can't ever just listen to it. But yeah, I found it useful to ask, like, what are you good at? I mean, have you hit limits like that?
I did today, actually. Yeah, today. So today I was, so my personal blog, my website runs on a blogging platform called Hugo, and I wanted to add like I wanted to add a thing at the bottom of the page that's like related articles, like, you just read this article about whatever, here's some other articles. And so I told my buddy Claude Code that and pointed it at the documentation on the website, and it proceeded to just flail like terribly for about half an hour. And I think like after a while of using these tools, you kind of get like a sense of like, is this like flailing that's just going to go on forever, or is this like, it just needs a little bit of redirection and then it's going to kind of break through? It was just like flailing really badly, and I suspect it's just because it doesn't know that it's my esoteric, slightly obscure hipster blogging platform there isn't that much in the training set, right? There isn't that much information on how to use it in its training set. The only thing that the AI is loading into its context window is like the one document page that it read, and so it just doesn't perform very well in that situation.
You reminded me of a similar story about a static site generating tool. And I was like, oh, I want to add this. And I caught it like trying to do database checks at runtime. I'm like, their runtime is build time. You get that, right? It's like, that's not going to work. And I told it over and over, and it just kept doing it. And I'm like, yeah, no way. We're doing a different path now.
Yeah. But that thing that you said of like choosing your kind of frameworks based on like kind of how AI friendly they are.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like in the water at the moment, this idea of like what, should you use a framework that's going to help you be more productive with AI? Should we be building like AI first kind of frameworks, all that kind of stuff? I think it makes sense. I certainly think the calculus that you make of like when you're choosing a new framework, it used to be when you were choosing a new framework, it's kind of like, what am I familiar with? How easy is it going to be for me to hire engineers that kind of speak that framework? Or how easy is it going to be for my existing engineers to kind of get up to speed? I think now you would add into that kind of like, how easy is it going to be for like an AI to work with this technology? I don't think it makes sense to kind of say like, let's rewrite stuff or switch things to make them more AI friendly at the moment. That's just kind of like my personal sense. And I get a little bit nervous about, I get nervous that we're going to get stuck in this kind of like situation where people can't, where the switching cost to go to the next cool thing is going to be way higher, right? Because it's not like getting, like I think specifically, so I do quite a lot of front end, and I think specifically about Next and Hodgson.
Okay.
And like,
yeah.
The AI is really good with that set of things, and inevitably, like better things are going to come along, particularly in the JavaScript space. Like something's cool for like 3 months and then the replacement comes along. I kind of worry a little bit that there's going to be this kind of stagnation where like people are going to have a really hard time switching off of Next or switching off of Hodgson because they're the AI knows it. And then you kind of get this vicious cycle where because people aren't using the new thing, the AI is not going to have that in the training set. And so
are we going to end up with a lot of like Python 2 problems where it just hangs around for far too long and because you can't move off of it because something's got a dependency? Yeah.
I think there's so much stuff around, like there's so much interesting stuff that's going to happen or is already starting to happen around kind of like catering to the AI, like really verbose error messages, so the AI can understand and get into its context window what's happening. Error messages that give the AI like a link to a thing to read, for example, is like way more useful. Like you basically what we're starting to do is like tailor all of our stuff to an engineer who just started for their first day at the company, right? So like one of the tricks that I started doing with one of my projects was if something went wrong, it would report the error and then underneath it would just say right there, run this command to access the full Docker logs. Because like you don't need, like, as a human, as a person on a team, you don't need, like, that's useful for a little bit when you're first started on a team, but eventually you know to go to the README or whatever. But like for the AI, it's literally just every time you reset the context window, it's their first day on the job.
So be verbose.
Yeah, so be verbose and just be like really explicit about, like, just put information right there where you need it. Because it's not going to, I mean, it might have read the README, but it's not going to, like, the tribal knowledge just doesn't accumulate, right? Like, it's interesting how that changes the ergonomics of things.
Are we going to end up plugging MCP into exception handling or something, like where you can, like, literally just tell that this is what's going on? Interesting. Yeah. Okay. No, I like that. That's interesting.
When I was at ThoughtWorks, one of the things we had a lot of a focus on was kind of the onboarding experience. I think partly because as a consultancy, people are kind of coming and going all the time. And so we did spend a lot of time making the tools kind of like making a code base kind of like self-operating. So you could just walk up to the code base and run a command, and it would, pull down the requirements onto your machine and like make sure you had the right versions of things. And we invested like a lot of time on some teams in doing that. And there's now, like, I think there's this kind of resurgence of that, because now you've got like a new employee arriving every time, like, especially if you're using one of these like asynchronous coding agent things like Codex or Devin or something like that. It needs to go from a standing start, like kind of, a brand new laptop, and it's pointed at the Git repo essentially, and be able to run the tests, be able to access the database, be able to create test fixtures, like all of that kind of stuff. So you kind of like, we're kind of, I think we're going to see a resurgence or a kind of like rediscovery of some of these practices that kind of like ThoughtWorks teams were doing for a long time.
Yeah. So not just sort of a readme.md, which is maybe up to date, or even a really great one where you can follow it bit by bit, but like literally script it all out and pull it. But like,
so I think when we, like, one of the things that I would go on and on about ThoughtWorks was like, don't like replace documentation with tooling. Like, rather than saying to compile the code, run this command, make a little bash script called /compile that does that thing, right? And because it's easier, it's always there. It's deterministic. It doesn't rely on like someone remembering to do it. And the exact same thing applies for a coding agent. So for a coding agent, for example, don't say in your Claude.md or your agents.md or your README or whatever, don't say to run the linting command, do these 5 things and then do this. Put it in a little script and tell it run this script. Just like humans, every little bit of context that you add to that context window distracts the AI, makes it harder, and it's not guaranteed to do it. So like so another example is like, imagine a README file that says, in this code base, we prefer lines to be less than 80 characters long, right? You could do that, or you could just make a linter that just deterministically enforces that, right? And there's loads and loads of examples like that where you could like expend a bunch of energy and tokens to get the AI to kind of think about things and follow things, and it's going to sometimes do it, sometimes not. Or you could use a good old-fashioned linter, a good old-fashioned type checker, etc., etc.
Makefile. Yeah, to your point, anything you can not put in context, is you're going to get a more effective session.
That's number one. It's like the number one game, like the number one thing that I think people need to learn, the kind of skill, the new skill that you need to learn to be successful with these coding agents is context management, like really thinking about context, like very intentionally managing what's in the context of the agent.
Cool. So I'm using Claude Code too, and part of me wants to like totally nerd out about the deep details of session management and how often do you compact, but let's not. Let's try to sort of keep it rolling at a different level. I'm interested in what you're thinking about teams and how processes work and what's important now. Like I was talking to a guy earlier today who's like, okay, test-driven development doesn't work, but here's an approach that's kind of like it. Like a lot of this stuff that we've just held dear and has been the received wisdom, best practice, however you want to talk about it for so long, it seems to me like, oh gosh, everything's on the table, really. Like, how much do you think is changing from the terms of like process and what's even important?
I'm not sure I agree that that like there's a lot of stuff that we thought was a good idea that is no longer a good idea necessarily. But we could kind of come back to that, maybe debate it more. But like I think the thing that is changing is our ability, like the amount of code that we can now produce has gone way up.
Yeah.
The quality of that code is probably gone down, almost certainly gone down. So like the signal to noise ratio is almost certainly way worse unless you do something about it. And you know what I think a very common theme when you talk to teams that have kind of like really kind of like gone it like really wanted to pushed hard on adopting this kind of AI enabled engineering, the very common theme is like you're basically just moving the bottleneck to post coding, everything post coding, right? Because the entire like the reason we're writing software is to deliver value to a user, right? That's what we're doing. We're not writing code for the sake of writing code. So you think about that chain from like coming up with an idea through to delivering value. We've gotten way better, faster, maybe you could say, definitely faster, I would say, at like we've compressed down how long it takes to go from kind of idea to some version of software, but the rest of it, there's not that much that the AI is helping with post authoring the code, right? Like it's a little bit helping with code review, maybe, or maybe it could in some ways be making it worse because it's kind of like a false friend, because it's kind of like being like, yes, here's 700 words about this PR, which makes you feel like it's really paying attention. But AI's number one job is to sound legit, not to actually say things that are true, not to do things correctly. Its entire goal is to seem legit. So like it can bullshit you really easily. So yeah, so I think that's the biggest kind of thing I think is shifting, is like to some extent trying to figure out how to get like way more defensive and rigorous in that post code authoring phase, but also get more kind of efficient because there's just more stuff coming in, right? And I don't think we've figured it out at all. Like I don't think we've figured out at all the right way to deal with all of this stuff coming in. And there's a lot of pressure to like do more and more of this stuff because everyone's excited about it, and it's hard to see the it's like a really trailing indicator, like seeing the maintainability of the code base kind of go down. You don't really see that for like months, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think that's I'm not sure if I really answered your question, but I think that's like the thing. Yeah, that's the thing that I think is really worrying to some extent, is like, how do we hold the line on internal quality and not kind of get ourselves into a situation in 6 months' time or 2 years' time where like it's a total mess and we don't know how we got there.
I think you're hitting on a couple of important things with that, and one of them is just the volume of code that it can create, and sometimes I think to myself, it's called Claude Code, not Claude Deploy, right, or not Claude Test, or it's just not. And like at first, I felt like every time I sat down, I was like, wow, you're so good at Greenfield, let's do some Greenfield. And then I'd have like a 2/3 finished pile of Greenfield, and here's another one. And like Magpie combined with its generative nature was just creating these mountains of code around me. And yeah, like sometimes I wonder even too, is it incented to? Like it's charging by the tokens sometimes. So
yeah, I mean, it definitely, well, like one of the qualities of like, you know, the coding agent, as if you were to anthropomorphize it and give it a personality, one of its qualities is it kind of likes to over engineer and gold plate stuff. Like you ask it like, hey, write a script. It does, like the thing that Claude Code and its friends do not understand is the carrying cost of code. Like and the thing that scares me is a lot of engineers don't understand it unless they've been through the trenches like quite a lot. They like Claude Code, like you say, like this happens to me every week. Like it happened this week where I wanted to write a little script that would just generate some test data for me, and I describe what I want to do, have a little back and forth. As an aside, being able to describe what you want to do like with voice using like one of these whisper things is amazing. I'm really into that. Yeah, really, it's really cool. Anyway, so I'm chatting with Claude saying, you know, I need the script that should create this test data. Read these model files to understand how data's supposed to look, blah, 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 write the script. And it generates this script that does like the stuff I want to do, plus it has like a dry run mode and like a progress bar and like the ability to configure blah, blah, blah. And it's 100% perfectly functional, right? Like it works great. So it's not like, oh, like this stuff has got bugs in, but it's a carrying cost, right? Like that, it takes me, like, even just reviewing it, I've got to like spend more time. And then if at some point I want to understand what the script does, I'm going to have to reread it. Like all this stuff, it adds cost. Yeah. And the AI doesn't have that design sense. One of the many things where AI has a bad design sense is an understanding of like over-engineering, gold plating. Like, you're not impressing me, Claude. You're just giving me more work. You're giving Future Pete more work, you know?
Well, I giggle because I have like dry run features now for like most of what I've made with Claude Code, so I can totally relate. I also found it like trying to be defensive about a script running in a Docker container to like keep it running. I'm like, no, let it die.
Yeah. Loads and loads of stuff like that. Like, you know, if this thing doesn't work, then have a fallback to do it this way. It's like, no. Like, if you get to if you run this thing and it can't do this thing, something is going wrong. Fail fast, right? Like, and it's interesting because I think a lot of like real AI boosters who kind of believe that this thing is going to kind of replace engineers will say like, oh, well, you know what you need to do is you need to write in your Claude.md or your agent.md or whatever. Don't over-engineer things and write like a small kind of like blog post about the cost of carrying code and I just don't believe that's true. I don't believe that it'll help maybe in some cases, but you're still going to get.
I've put things in my Claude MD several times that say like, do not do this without my.
But did you try putting it in all caps? Because sometimes.
Exactly, right. and like you said about context, you're just stealing context at that point.
Right, 100%. And there's all this like super interesting academic research around kind of like context confusion and context poisoning and context rot. Yeah. That's a real thing, and I know for a fact that the Frontier Labs are actively trying to understand or trying to improve how these coding agents can kind of follow instructions when there's kind of like confusing kind of variants with the instruction, that kind of stuff. It's not a solved problem at all. I don't think it will be a solved problem.
Okay, but I want to pick up on something else you said. You made a neat point that I hadn't thought of yet, where it's like, oh, it's good at reading, and because its context is constantly disappearing, that maybe being verbose is good. And I thought to myself a few times, man, it's a faster reader than I am. I don't know if it's totally absorbing everything as quickly as I want it to, or correctly, but still, it's a very fast reader. And we've talked about how verbosity is maybe good. I don't know, like maybe that's just kind of the cost of it. If it's reading the code and it's writing the code, is that carrying cost the right way to think about it? Like it's a carrying cost for us, but for it. But maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm conflating things. What do you think?
I mean, I think that's kind of a variant of the argument of like, do we even care about what the code looks like because the AI is going to be working on the code? And I have not and anything beyond the scale of like a few files, like a few hundred lines of code. I haven't gotten to the point that I don't feel like I need to look at the code of what it's doing.
Yeah.
And that line of progress of the AI getting better and better things, that is not happening in my experience for like, I'm not trusting the AI with bigger and bigger chunks of functionality because it just doesn't have, there's certain things that the AI just is not good at. Like, I don't really believe it's going to get that much better at. And so there's always going to be a human in the loop. And so even for like, I think the place where you can just ignore the details is like these kind of one-off throwaway scripts. I don't care what it looks like. I don't need to read the code, or at least I don't need to understand the code in detail. Or like a really well-contained kind of modular interface. So I used AI to write something that would kind of walk through a file system and find a certain type of file and then do something to it. And that kind of like file walking code is like a perfect example of something where I can give it to an AI, write some tests or work with the AI to write some tests to kind of like check that it does the things I need it to do, just to make sure the AI didn't me and the AI didn't have a miscommunication about the requirements. But then inside of that kind of contained boundary, I don't ever need to read that code. until it starts breaking. And I'm fine with like having an AI maintain it. And in that case, yeah, it can be as verbose as it wants. It can be over-engineered. It can, do weird things to optimize the code that it doesn't need to do, all that kind of stuff. But that's actually pretty rare. Like most...
You're right.
I think it just comes back to the same thing as like you're giving a task to a junior engineer. Like which tasks do you feel the need to read what they're doing and understand
so maybe a good distinction is like verbose and errors, good, right? In terms of over engineering, not. Like we talked about how you want it to fail fast. You don't want to do all the try catching in this situation, unless it's code on the other side of an external boundary that you need to be dealing with. Like it's otherwise you don't, right? So I think that's a good way to think about it.
I think whether the author was a machine or a human, the nature of the code is still the same, and those kind of like rules of gravity around software, around source code, haven't changed at all just because the AI is doing it. Like the cost of complexity and the interaction between things and how much stuff you have to hold in your head in order to understand how something works, that is still as much of a... I just don't think the fundamental kind of rules of the game have changed that much.
I'm with you. And whether it's the 65 watts of brain in my head or the context in this multi-petabyte system that they're running, it's still managing how much context you've got to have. Okay, fine. I'm with you on that. Okay. So I'm with you on not everything has changed, right? I think that's right. I think I've mostly been doing it one-on-one, right? So I'm somewhat disadvantaged. The teams that I'm serving currently aren't allowed to use the tools yet. Like the IT department is trying to figure out which one we're allowed to use, and so
as an aside, this is what like one of the things I love when like the real AI boosters were saying, 6 months time, no one's going to be writing code. I'm like, have you seen the procurement policies at your local bank? Like the world does not like operate at the speed of like the kind of the boosters. Anyway, yeah, like that nature of it is like kind of extends my PDoom or reduces my PDoom.
Yeah, I think fair point. So anyhow, I guess I'm using these tools mostly solo, mostly one-on-one. And I'm finding that like, I definitely feel like I'm acting more like a product manager and to your point, also the tester. I sometimes say I will not work on anything with AI unless it's really important because that will make me test it. If I'm going to work, or to your point, throw away, that's also fine. But if it's like middle ground important, it's like, no, I better just do it myself because, I need to care so deeply that I'm going to really check what it does. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. And I just think that there's the strengths and weaknesses of the AI are really kind of alien to us. Yeah. I think that kind of jagged intelligence metaphor I think is really apt, and even until you've even after I've gone pretty far down the rabbit hole of like really wanting to try and maximize my use of AI, but I still find myself kind of like thinking about it in a way that I still find myself being really surprised at how bad it is at some things or how good it is at other things, and then I have to be like, oh right, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense why it wouldn't be doing well at this or why it would be doing really well at that. So I think it takes a lot of just hands-on experience with it to develop that intuition or to kind of like...
It's a whole new skill set to your point. Like when to hold his hand, when to just tell it, nope, you're not going to get this. I'm going to do it for you.
Yeah. Yep. And when to like be able to detect that it's just trying to please you or trying to get away with things, it's the thing that the almost the number one strength of these AIs is to all of their training is to produce legit looking output. That's literally the foundational kind of like thing of the model is produce reasonable looking output. And so it's like for humans, we kind of have this assumption, a reasonable assumption that if something looks reasonable, it probably is reasonable. But that's not like its goal is not to produce stuff that is reasonable. Its goal is to produce stuff that looks reasonable. Most of the time it does that by producing stuff that is reasonable, but it doesn't have to, right? Like if it can find a shortcut, then it's going to take that path of least resistance because we've spent millions of dollars to train it to produce stuff
to do that. Yeah. And to your point, taste, right? Like it might have found a path, but it might not be a good
Well,
one.
it's trained on the average of the internet, right?
Yeah,
Would you
right.
like your software to look like the average software on the internet? Not even the average software. Do you know what I mean? Because, like, so a really good example of this is, why does my AI generated code have loads of comments? Because when people are writing about code in public, they put comments to describe stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yep.
I did this. So there's more of that in the training set. And so, like, I had this, I've seen so many different versions of people saying, like, is the AI doing this because it will help it later on? Or is the AI doing this? I think that's like a really bad way of thinking about it, because the AI is not thinking. The AI is not like thinking, oh, if I put this here, then later on I'll come back. All it's doing is just like, bleh, like stream of consciousness, like just typing as fast as it can without thinking. And part of the thing it's doing based on the training set is, I've seen lots of stuff with comments, so I'm going to make stuff with comments, but it's not because it's kind of being thoughtful about, in the future I'll be able to read this,
Yeah, 100%. So if I intuit from this, right, like here in my solo operation, I'm kind of more product manager these days, less developer, a lot more tester these days. Is this going to change team composition? Like, is that going to stand up? Like, like there was sort of a ratio. You've got like a business analyst or product manager. There was a QA. There was, kind of driving strategy, and like, I don't know, 8 developers, and they're probably building the test suite and they're building the software. That was like, you could almost stamp that out, this is the ratio, Nothing's ever that true, but you could recognize that. Is it going to be like that? Like how do you think this is going to change the way we staff teams?
It's a good question. It's a really good question. I'm not sure. My gut feel, and I'm not sure how I could justify this, but my gut feel is it's going to change the composition of teams in kind of the same way as the move towards test automation change the composition of teams, where like the idea of having a dedicated QA is still there in a lot of organizations, but I would say the more kind of like modern software engineering team, the more modern kind of product delivery team is less likely to have a dedicated tester. In fact, it's less likely now to even have someone who's kind of like dedicated kind of like test automation at all. It's just that the idea of that being a dedicated role is less common. I think that something like that kind of scale of change is going to happen, but I don't know. That's just kind of my gut feel, but I'm not sure I could actually articulate what is gonna shift. It's I'm not sure. I really don't know what's going to happen with the whole kind of like junior engineer thing, right? Because I think that there is this real challenge that, because the AI is really good at saying stuff that sounds legit, when you don't have the experience to kind of like have built up a sense of kind of taste as to like, code, there's a carrying cost to code, so we probably shouldn't have this dry run function in this script, right? If you don't know that, then you're not going to push back on the AI and steer it. And a junior engineer, through no fault of their own, just hasn't built up that sense of taste, right? So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that the junior engineer is a much more of an intentional kind of apprenticeship type thing, where the junior engineer is working with a more senior engineer to drive the AI, and like the senior engineer is kind of like teaching the junior engineer, like, when the AI does this, maybe that, like, because the thing is, we like the need for experienced software engineers is not going to go away. I strongly believe that the AI is not going to kind of keep on getting better and better at, like, it just hasn't gotten that much better at certain things, right? So there's always going to be the need for a thoughtful, experienced engineer in the loop, right? And at some point, like, all of us thoughtful, experienced engineers are going to die. Like, it's like, like at some point we're going to stop being around. And so at some point I feel like there's going to be this natural pull of like, we need more humans in the loop. We don't have enough experienced engineers. I guess we've got to start growing them.
There's going to be this hangover moment in the middle where we're not making new ones anymore.
Maybe, but like, even now, like a lot of the companies that are kind of like, or some of the companies that are really kind of went all in on AI are hiring a ton of interns. Like Shopify had that crazy thing of like hiring like 1,000 interns or something, or bringing in 1,000 interns or something like that. There'll be maybe a hangover. I think that's probably quite likely, but it might not even be that big of a kind of like this kind of like weird moment where, you know, like everyone's forgotten how to write software and we have to kind of rediscover it.
Right. Somebody was asking on Reddit invariably the other day, like, hey, could I self-teach myself to write code? And I don't know why I responded, but I did. And I said, you know, a couple of things like I like this and I like that. And also, if you want to learn to code, don't use AI agents for like the first year. You know, you're not going to learn at that point, not in the same way.
I think that so the actual act of typing in something at less than the granularity of like a function, let's say. So like writing a for loop and understanding this is the right way. I think that could potentially eventually just be something that you never need to know. Like in the same way as kind of an assembler, like the same way as like in college I
don't care what's in the CPU registers and those kinds of things.
Yeah, I don't need to understand how memory registers work. Some people know and it's useful, but the average engineer doesn't necessarily need to know that. I think we maybe will get to that point where like the level of abstraction lifts a little bit. Anything where you start talking about software design, like when should something be, you know, like single responsibility principle, and like which file should this code be and what should the dependencies be between things, that kind of stuff. Once you get anywhere near that level, I think you're totally right. You can't just like get an AI to do it and then kind of like say, oh, I seems right? Because it's not. That's a real kind of like matter of taste and skill, and you have to learn from people. You can't just kind of figure it out. And the AI is not very good at that. Like it's okay at it, but it's definitely not good at it. It's mediocre at best. It's kind of like junior to mid-level engineer at best.
Yeah. Have you gotten to work with it much around brownfield code or sort of like it's almost one ball of wax with a green field? You know, you still have to keep it on guardrails, but I'd argue that maybe that's its strong suit. But trying to get it to work with an existing code base, especially a large one, like
I think it's it's almost just a totally different set of use cases. I really want to get my teeth into it with a really big brownfield system. I haven't had the opportunity to. I definitely know that like there's just a total shift in how you use the AI when it's greenfield or small enough that it can kind of hold it in its head. It's, you know, you're super productive. It's like one-shotting things all over the place. As soon as you move to anything where there's a bunch of context that it isn't going to naturally find and it has to go out and search, suddenly the way that you're working with the AI 100% different. Like the one-shotting thing is like a really bad idea. You've got to do this thing where you work with the AI to make a plan, and then you see, oh, you didn't know that there's this thing over here. So the way that you use it to make changes to software or to add features to the software changes quite a lot. But the thing that is super cool is brownfield is where a whole new set of like benefits of AI comes. So debugging and understanding performance issues, things like that. It is weirdly like this goes back to that kind of unintuitive thing. Like just a couple of days ago, I had this like I had this irritating n+1 bug where n+1 bug is where like you make a request to the web service or whatever, and rather than it making one like good database query, it makes like a bunch of little database queries. Super common with kind of like frameworks like Django or Rails or kind of ORMs that are doing a bunch of stuff for you.
Get me the list of classes. Here they are. Okay, for each class, get me all the students in the class, which turns it into
exactly. And it doesn't know ahead of time, and so though like fixing those is kind of a pain. And understanding how to fix them with the ORM is also kind of a pain. Yeah. It turns out that you can just like point Claude Code in the general direction of the problem, and if you've got a hand on the wheel and you're watching it and you've got enough experience to kind of know whether it's going off into a rat hole or not, it is amazing. Like it found this super obscure, weird issue that I looked at the issue and I was like, oh God, this is going to be like 3 days. And eventually I'm going to find out, like, it turns out that there's this weird thing in the framework where this middleware does this thing and it has this side effect. And it found it it went down a really bad rabbit hole. I told it like, that doesn't seem right. Have you thought about this thing? And then it made these amazing leaps of intuition, went off and read a bunch of code that I didn't even know was there or had forgotten was there, came back with this like essay on exactly what the root cause was. It was wrong. I corrected it and told it to go in another place. It did the same thing again and came back, and I was like, gee willikers, that is exactly what the issue was. And it really would have taken me, like, I don't know if I'd ever have found that bug. Like I think the cost to find that bug would have been more than the benefit of doing it. I probably would have just said like, oh well, we're just going to have this be slow for a while because it's not worth figuring it out. But like being able to kind of essentially set this junior intern that with encyclopedic knowledge off, whirring away, reading all the code, thinking out loud, telling me what it's thinking, and course correcting it. It's amazing. It's so good at that. It's like it's a real game changer for certain types of problems, and specifically those kind of brownfield things where no one knows, right? No one can hold it in their head, and because I think partly because the agent, it's built to learn code bases it doesn't understand. Like a bunch of the reinforcement learning is around that. It has to be really good at that because it walks up to a code base brand new every day. It's got a bunch of skills around that are actually really useful for code bases where no one knows how it all works because it's just too big and it was written over years and years, and the person that made the decision is no longer with the company and all that kind of stuff. So it turns out that it's like amazingly useful at doing things like debugging, figuring out stack traces, figuring out weird performance issues.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm with you. I pointed it at a code base of my own, which is not very big, but it's something I hadn't touched in like a year and a half. And I just asked it like, hey, go through this code base and like find some problems. And it came back with some stuff. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. That's a kind of SQL injection. I wasn't thinking of it that way because it was a JSON predicate, but yeah, it is. Like, good catch. And so like some of its ability to like read and find stuff quickly could be really amazing. I'm with you on that. Yeah. But to your point about like the way it solutions, I worry about like anytime it wants to say like, here, we'll just migrate this database table into this. And I'm like, oh boy, like, let's break that into very small steps.
Yeah. And it's super keen, and it's super keen to do stuff, right? Like it's kind of trained to
do you want to do that now? I deployed it for you already. It's like, no.
That's exactly the thing with this bug. It started fixing it. It was like, whoa. Hey, let's not fix anything right now. I just want to get, tell me what it's doing. But it is, it's so good at that, and it is extremely. Obviously we're anthropomorphizing this kind of this software a lot, and it's not a real person. It's not an actual thinking thing, but like it does remind me a lot of working with an extremely like energetic and motivated like junior engineer that's like, I couldn't quite figure it out, so I ended up just writing a little script that like decompiles the thing, and that didn't work, and none of these things like wow, okay, great. Like all of that wasn't going to help because actually the issue's over here, but I'm glad you're so excited about solving this problem.
Yeah. All energy and every time it talks to you, it's like everything is now completely fixed. It's like, no, it's not. Yeah. Okay. So I keep digging into like the processes and all of this. So I'm not writing stories anymore. Like I kind of have like epics or half thoughts in a board. But again, I'm not on a team. But I don't know. I don't imagine that we're going to need the same sort of like detailed stories. We've talked about testing a little bit, but what do you? Yeah.
I think if anything, it's the opposite. So either if we're literally taking the requirements and giving them to an AI and saying, hey, come up with a plan for how to implement this feature, then we need those requirements to be really detailed, right? Or we're kind of embracing the kind of real agile kind of XP thing and saying, oh, well, the story is just a placeholder for a conversation, and we're having the PM, the product person, an engineer, and the AI kind of working together to make the plan. In some cases, maybe that is like a more technical PM working directly with the AI to come up with a plan. I think in that cases, maybe there is like a little bit of a shift of team composition. But there's this fundamental thing that, again, like these kind of fundamental forces that haven't changed, is you have to define how the software works. If you trust, just like you don't want to trust the junior engineer to decide like to make the decisions on what the workflow should be, because the junior engineer doesn't have the context of like, what does the business care about? Where are they trying to maximize their profit? Or what kind of users do we care about?
Yeah.
Like, or what do the users care about, right? Like all that stuff. Shouldn't expect the engineer to necessarily have all that context. You certainly shouldn't expect the AI to have that context. Even if the AI does have the context, I wouldn't trust the AI's taste in like making those decisions, right? So you still need a human to kind of like work through defining the problem. It's just that maybe there's an AI in that conversation as well as an engineer. But that thing of like a product person and an engineer kind of talking together to figure out all of the details of like, oh, hey, did you think about like, what should we do when there aren't any classes in the list? Or what should we do if there's an error case, all that kind of stuff? Like, I think there's still all of that back and forth. It's just that there's this extra kind of team member is a bit generous, but there's this extra tool that we can use where, you know, maybe the PM can work with the AI to say, hey, what features did I miss? And the AI will ask the PM to be incredibly verbose and cover every single error case. And then the PM will have to have be an experienced product person and say like, oh, I don't think I need to define all of this stuff up here. Like we can leave some of it as a thing for the engineer to decide or for the AI to decide.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. I buy that.
Yeah. The fundamental requirements of like building features, building software, I don't think they really change that much.
Okay. So how do you guess, what do you think might be different between, say, very small startups, enterprise, right? So for enterprise, I'm thinking something that's probably Fortune 500, but not originally like Google, yeah, and scale ups, right? So now you are getting into your Googles and your Magnificent Seven and all of this. Like, how do you think this might be different for each one of those?
If we, even if we put AI to one side, what's the difference between why are startups able to run laps around enterprises? Because they're not carrying around a bunch of existing stuff, and to change anything in a big company, you need to there's just more process and conversations and whatever else, but you just need a lot to understand a lot more context. You have to have a lot of these silly meetings. At least some percentage of those silly meetings are actually valuable in terms of kind of gathering the context of like, oh, it turns out that we have this company that we acquired in 1987 and we still have some users in Nebraska and they have this requirement to do blah, 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 right? Like there's kind of like stuff that happens in enterprise. I don't think that changes. So I think that it's harder to really get a lot of the, like some of the benefit, it's kind of like the bigger version of that kind of greenfield versus brownfield thing we were just talking about, right? Where like enterprises are like the ultimate kind of nuclear wasteland scarred brownfield.
You have all of the brownfields.
Super fun site. And so I think where AI can help is different, and it's less that kind of like I'm one-shotting my way through features and just kind of telling the agent to do something and it's doing something. I think just doesn't happen. Early stage startups are the other extreme, right? Because early stage, like let's say pre-product market fit, literally the entire code base you're probably going to throw away, or you plan on throwing it away. And in those cases, I think just it's going to be really, really different. It probably already is for most of them, I think, where you're just kind of like using Lovable or V0 or whatever to build a prototype, and you can probably get most of it working without really having to look at the code. And if it looks good, then you rework. Then if you do really find product market fit, or there's enough of a sense of product market fit that you want to kind of double down and kind of build out the feature set, then maybe you throw away the vibe coded version of the thing, and you kind of work with an engineer works with the AI to really rapidly build like something really scrappy, and the engineer's not really looking at the code that much, but they're at least kind of guiding it. So I think it's just everything is turned up to 11 in that startup space, and then the scale-up space, I think, I don't know, I guess scale-up's kind of in the middle, I guess. And I think we kind of joked about it a little bit earlier, but that thing of like, am I allowed to use these tools is a real thing, not just in enterprises, like in like mid-tier startups or scale-ups. I think that a lot of people are being really gaslit on how fast this is moving, because there's these loud kind of people who are talking about how 50% of their code is written by AI, or not,
Loud people who shall remain nameless.
I mean, loud people who often have a vested financial interest in the success of AI, right? When I talk to actual kind of like normal companies that are just out there, they're still, to some extent, still like a lot of their team is still just getting laced up, getting their running shoes laced up. Like they're trying to decide, should we allow people to use something other than Copilot? And so I think it's actually, there's a long way. Yeah, we're closer to the starting line for this stuff than I think a lot of people realize, and a lot of people have kind of FOMO of like, oh my gosh, like my engineers aren't like writing 90% of their commits using AI. I guess we're really behind the times, and actually, that's the case for
Maybe
a
you're
lot
fine.
of people. Yeah, I mean, I think you should still have a real sense of urgency. I think that there's a ton of absolute BS being spoken about how, how powerful AI-assisted coding is, but there's a real lift. Like there's a real productivity benefit, even if you just had all of your engineers using AI to help debug things and write little throwaway scripts and kind of just do those small use cases where it's just a really, really good fit. That's a legit like benefit in the productivity of your engineers. And if you're just sitting there saying like, oh, I think we should figure this out in the next quarter, next time we have like our annual planning cycle, we should really dedicate some time to research, blah blah blah. Then you're leaving stuff on the table, right? Like I think people should be taking this pretty seriously. There's a middle ground between super skeptical, like, oh, all of this stuff is just total hype, and the maximalist, like, oh yeah, no one's writing software anymore. It's just AI writing all the code.
Yeah, I think I've been through the multiple stages of that. I was definitely this stuff is barely different than Stack Overflow. Nope, it's different. It is. And I've had my moments of like, oh my God, I'm never coding without it, and then I fired it 2 days later, and so yeah.
And this whole conversation is just talking about using AI to help us build code. There's also AI powered product features, right? Which is a whole other thing where, I don't know, my personal experience, like I can't really think of that many features that I use as a consumer where I actually find AI useful. Writing code, definitely, like all the stuff we've just been talking about, definitely. Identifying trees, and like, I don't know, there's not that many use cases, right? Like I think, and I don't think that's because AI is not good. I think it's because we haven't yet, as like the business people and the product people haven't really figured out this alien intelligence, just in the same way as kind of software engineers are struggling to. I think there's a ton of like really interesting places where AI with a human in the loop is super, super powerful. But I think we still haven't figured those out. Like when I think about all the places where AI feels like it's really lifted up the game, or really delivered real value to a business, so coding, for example, it's when there's like a good, natural human in the loop kind of flow, right? Like that chat back and forth, or the kind of like the working with the agent to write code. That's where you get the biggest bang for your buck, because you can correct for all of the weird goofiness of the AI. And I haven't seen the product features that I've seen that are really silly are the ones where there isn't a human in the loop, and it's just like, this is stupid. Like it's not helpful.
Yeah. I will admit that I have used it to draw like cartoons in order to promote something.
Yeah.
And you talked earlier about that writer's block moment of like, I'm sitting down in front of a blank piece of paper. Like sometimes when like marketing things, like for a little startup that I was working on the side, I wanted to like, okay, what feature, how am I going to describe the features? And it'll be wrong, but it'll just like pour stuff out. And it's like, oh yeah, you that's a neat system for analyzing the feature in these 5 different lenses.
Yeah.
I would have just been like, it does this thing,
I mean, what I think about it is the place where you either wouldn't have just even done something before, or where you're fine with it being really mediocre.
Yeah.
Which is also the kind of the same with how we use it for software, right? Like you vibe code like a throwaway script or like some internal tool or whatever, and it's okay if it's mediocre. It's the same thing with the kind of the copy that it writes for advertising, or the stupid viral videos, or the cartoons that I put in blog posts. Like I generate with my AI because if I didn't, otherwise I wouldn't put anything in there at all. But for drawing a diagram where I actually really need it to be more than mediocre, I'll put in the effort to do it myself because I want it to be more than mediocre. But there aren't that many places where the AI can be more than mid, basically.
Yeah. One of the things that keeps coming back to me is writing is thinking, right? And so anytime I'm actually writing something like an article, not necessarily code, but more like articles, I'm not going to have AI write it. I might have it try to write a pithy headline because I'm not good at that. But the actual thing, like, no, I want to go learn that thing. I don't want it to.
I think there's a real sense of AI taking away our critical thinking that I feel that, like, I think you kind of touched on this earlier when you were talking about certain kind of like using it for certain types of code, you kind of lose touch with the code. I've definitely had that experience where I've written something and I've been human in the loop, but kind of just mainly vibe coding, letting it do its thing. And after like about a few hours, I'm like, I actually have no idea what I'm doing here. Like I have stopped actually thinking about the software design because there's just a lot of code, and it's kind of like my ego depletion has kicked in. I'm not really using my level 2 brain anymore. I'm just kind of saying, yeah, sure. And I think at that point, you really do have to stop and say, what am I doing here? And realize like there's a sunk cost fallacy of like, wow, this was pretty cheap to produce. I could just throw all this stuff away and start again. And if you see it as that exercise, right, of like creating something mediocre to help you think through something or to get you past that blank slate, I think it's super valuable. But there's a real trap there of just being like, well, I don't know, like this works and like there's a lot of code here, so I guess we should keep it. Like I think that's a bad decision.
I'm with you. You're reminding me I went through a phase where I'm like, oh my gosh, I could just like, at the meeting that I'm in where I'm not really participating, I could just like, keep nudging it on the side. And it's like, no, I don't do that anymore. I'm either doing it or I'm not doing it. Like,
you've got to be actually in the loop. Like just kind of human kind of just like half-heartedly like hitting yes. Like that's, you're not actually, you're not like pulling your weight in the collaboration there between the man and the machine.
Yeah. And you're back to the problem of it just generative. Like it's generative AI. It just keeps making stuff and like none of it ships and none of it's tested and none of it's any good. And so what's the point? That's inventory. Yeah, it's a cost.
Yeah, 100%. Something to carry around.
Okay, so you've actually said a couple of things already that are like great quotes, and I'm like, oh gosh, we could end it there, but we haven't. So I'll start taking us downhill a little bit, maybe. And so maybe in your AI journey, maybe anywhere in your career as a human, in your relationships with other humans, what's something that you've learned? What's something that you once thought and realized, oh, I was wrong about that?
Oh my gosh, that is like a super deep and profound question. Okay, well, so I think I will say that, I don't know how this relates to any of this conversation, but I think that being able to put yourself in the other person's mind, not literally, obviously, but like seeing the other person's point of view, having empathy, understanding, thinking about what they're seeing when you say something is like an amazing superpower. I think it's kind of a consulting thing, but it's also, I find myself doing it when I'm working with AI, where I'm thinking to myself like, what's in its context window? Like, is it overloaded? But always having that kind of like little thing of like, how is the other person seeing how is someone else seeing the world rather than how am I seeing the world is, I think, just an amazing, it can change just the way you interact with the world in general.
100%. Totally agree. A career moment or a life moment that you're most proud of?
I can't really think of anything. Something that I was terrified of but was kind of cool in retrospect was years and years ago, I was working on this open source testing framework for mobile, and I got flown to another continent. So I live in the US. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I flew to Amsterdam to do a conference talk. And the conference talk was in this like old like 1900s kind of theater that had been turned into a cinema. And like I was like giving this talk like on this giant, like amazing stage with like this ginormous, like movie theater sized kind of slides behind me. That was pretty cool. It was incredibly terrifying, but also it was a pretty fun thing to do. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I'm running out of landing questions. So yeah, let's give it a wrap up. Pete, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today about engineering. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, it was super fun. Lovely to spend time with you and chit chat about all this stuff. It's always fun to nerd out about it.
Awesome. Okay. Talk soon.
They're small, highly maneuverable, and in some respects they think for themselves.